Were you supposed to? Yeah. Was he?
I think it's going to
It should have been something. No, at 4 o'clock. That's Chris. I hope him go over association size. They don't go all the time. You're just helping him.
She's great. She's very happy to have her.
Donor. Oh, you see what the in the rings. No, I get
One, two, check, check, 1, 2. It's on. You want to check the lab? You got it. 1, 2, check, 1, 2, 3. Mic check. Good, good.
She may have hair ones on it.
I know, I saw that today.
You should see what they wanted. That was a very nice piece to compliment. You know, like,
Very pleased by your response to me. We were talking about the inspection. I said, so why didn't you tell me where they came from? We would like to know. He said, hell.
he'll never respond. I said, no, he's going to respond. So anyway, that was very nice. He liked it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Afternoon, everyone. Is that the best we can do for volume, guys? And maybe we could do away with the background music, huh? I read an article in the Times that if you really want to make money as a composer, stop sitting around in a garret and trying to write your next symphony, but write ringtones for electronic devices. That apparently some of these dinky dinky ding ding, they actually get royalties. And some fraction of a penny, but if they get used a gazillion times, it's extremely profitable. So. It reminds me of, there used to be a cartoon my parents had of a mother looking at a newspaper, and she has it open to the sports section, and it says, new shortstop signed for $14 million. And she turns to the son at the piano and says, why don't you stop practicing and go out and play ball? As usual, friends, I have a list of things I want to talk with you about the state of the college and what's going on. And then, as usual, I'm happy to talk about whatever y'all want to talk about. I'll work my way in sequence. First, we'll start with buildings and grounds and work our way through other issues. As far as buildings and grounds are concerned, the faculty lounge is open. For members of the faculty, your badge will open the door. Interior decorating by Sarah Cottet and I. We've put up some historical items on the wall that seem to be of interest. Dr. Messina just gave me the background on one of them so we can put up descriptive captions. Some people have asked, how come we got a faculty lounge? Because I thought we ought to have one. It struck me walking around here, we don't have one. Why don't we have one? Let's find one. So that's why we have a faculty lounge. Next on the list of building and grounds, the story of Munger and what is called properly legally Parcel 5. When we refer to the Munger property as Parcel 5, that means on the county maps of the grasslands, there are descriptions of individual blocks of land. Parcel 1, 2, 3, 4. Parcel 5 is where the School of Health Science and Practice is, the Munger Pavilion, and Sunshine Cottage and the adjacent land. We continue to work through a plan to put in housing for the interns and residents at Westchester Medical Center and our own students, as well as some study space, shared space, and a Bet Midrash, which would be a synagogue space to replace the temporary space in Alumni House. We are to the stage of doing reviews of construction costs, costs of borrowing money, and also in conversations about whether or not, when the lease runs out for the Westchester Institute of Human Development and they have to look for a new home, whether they could remain housed on the campus by participating in construction on Parcel 5. That's a quick summary of what involves enormous numbers of 8.5 by 14-inch spreadsheets with tons of numbers about things. If you ever have trouble sleeping, I recommend you analyze spreadsheets of whether or not, if tax-exempt borrowing is at 5% versus 5.4% over a 30-year period versus fluctuations in rent when the positive cash flow begins in a student housing project. And I'm going to bet, like me, most of you didn't go to medical school or graduate school to learn this, but Papa did send me to Wharton for some reason, I suppose. Next on the list for building and grounds is that we need to do some thinking collectively about the clinic space in Dana Road. This clinic space was set aside and constructed for medical simulation facilities, but it is not used 10 hours a day, 5 days a week for medical simulation, and they're perfectly fine medical clinic rooms. We're working on 2 projects to use this space more intensively. One is whether we could expand our book of business for clinical research. Mostly pharmaceutical companies or members of the faculty that want to collect blood specimens, EKGs, pulmonary function tests, or whatever for testing drug A or device B, or for normal measurements of compound C. And then you would go over to the clinic to get it done after appropriate IRB approval and the other necessary I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed for clinical research. There is already one study underway at Dana Road in which blood specimens are being drawn for a study sponsored by Regeneron. I think we could increase that book of business. The other idea that we're looking at for the physical plant at Dana Road is we as an institution, he said, being blunt, spend 1 ton of a lot of money for our health insurance, writing checks to people who will not let our students set foot in their hospitals or clinics. And why don't we start capturing some of that clinical business ourselves by having a primary care service for the faculty and staff on our own property? I'm not suggesting that anyone is going to get a lung transplant or a cardiac stent placed at Dana Road, but for those of you who need your yearly physical or your hemoglobin A1C checked, your kid getting their camp physical, or all the other necessary things of primary care, why don't we start taking care of our own? And then instead of having to figure out when your appointment's going to be, when you have to take off from work or drive someplace, you'd either walk or drive over to Dana Road and get it done. Next on the list of building and grounds is, if you haven't seen the dental clinical facility upstairs in this building, go look. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. And they're open for business. State-of-the-art dental clinic. And I want to discuss that a little bit later again when I get to benefits. As far as our building in Patterson is concerned, it had a rough year. Problems with maintenance of the building, problems with operation of the elevator and water intrusion. The shakedown cruise appears to be over and the building is running far more smoothly, and right now is expected for reasonable, although not perfect, occupancy for the upcoming academic year. For those of you who haven't been there, it is across the street from St. Joseph's, so students doing clinical clerkships at St. Joseph's in Patterson can walk out the door and cross the street to St. Joseph's. And it must be the first brand new apartment building in Patterson in a generation or so. Time to start thinking about some upgrades to the physical appearance of Doc's Cafe, otherwise known as the cafeteria, and the space in and around that. So we'll be looking at some plans for that. Finally, I've had a pet project in reference to buildings and grounds about a shared bicycle program. And when I first looked into this, I looked at what it would cost to do something equivalent to City Bike in New York. That's really expensive because they have all these stations and you need electricity and swipe in and swipe out. But technology has gone nuts about this in the last year. Some of these new companies like Lime Bike and Spin have gone to venture capitalists and raised $250 million. And all over college campuses and municipalities, you see these bicycles. And if you want to use one, it's not locked to anything. It's just there on a kickstand. You try to roll it away, it won't move. But you go up to it and do your magic with some electronic gizmo. And for something like $1 for 30 minutes, you hop on the bike, go where you want, and leave it wherever you're going to leave it. And it has a GPS, and the company knows where it is, and there's no upfront cost to the municipality or the university. It's their problem. And so we're going to look into that. I'd like to reduce the reflex of I got to get in the car and drive from Sunshine Cottage to this building. I walked. I didn't take my bike today because I don't have, rain tire. Good way to get a stripe up your back of water is to ride your bicycle on days like this. But otherwise, if we had more shared bikes, maybe we'd be driving less and we'd save on parking and make the campus a little greener. Next thing I want to go over is some issues about benefits. It's the time of the year to work on the upcoming year's benefits package. There's been a lot of negative feedback about BeneCard. People haven't been satisfied with the quality of the service, so we're almost certainly there's gonna be a meeting of the Benefits and Compensation Committee with a proposal to give that business to somebody else. I know that in science, the plural of anecdote isn't data, but I've had a god-awful year with that company trying to get Mrs. Halperin's multiple sclerosis drugs, and I'm told that I'm not alone in that. The big problem for the basic health insurance issue for all of us is the rising cost of health care, which is not within my power to correct. You go out and find out what the average cost is of healthcare, rising drug problems, medical costs, and then they're going to pass it on to you with your benefits package. And if we just sort of said, well, okay, that is what it is, and we're going to adjust the premiums, we'd all be paying a lot more. So while I cannot change the rising cost of healthcare, we're going to almost certainly offer 5 options for health insurance instead of 3, so that if you want to be sure that you try to maintain your premiums as low as possible, you could pick a higher deductible plan if that's what you wanted. That tends to be done by people who are not heavy utilizers of healthcare, younger people, and say, I'm going to save costs on that. I went through this in my life about 15 years ago when my daughter finished college and was going to go to graduate school in physical therapy. She thought she's going to make some money. So how's she going to make money? The summa cum laude Phi Beta Kappa graduate goes to bartending school and starts tending bar in downtown Chapel Hill. And it's a good way to make money, tending bar in downtown Chapel Hill, especially if they go deep into the NCAAs and the bars are filled. You don't get any health insurance tending bar, even though you make a lot of money. So daddy's got to go find insurance because she's not on my plan anymore. And I quickly discovered you want to buy health insurance for a healthy young person, high deductible plan, which is basically catastrophic insurance, is reasonable. If God forbid you were in a car accident, she'd be covered, but otherwise not. So when you offer more options here at the college, there'll be variations in the deductible so you can think about your own personal financial situation and shop. I wish I could tell you I could fix the American problem of healthcare costs, but not within my portfolio, and the political will to do something about that seems to be evaporating in certain circles. We took a look at your utilization of dentists, and roughly about 45% of you are using in-network dentists, and therefore you're paying out-of-network costs with the Metropolitan plan. We can keep it cheaper if we switch to Cigna, and then about 65% of you will be in-network without doing anything. Just your dentist will be in the Cigna network, but not in the Met network, and also get very good coverage for those of you who choose to get your dental care upstairs in our own dental service. So that proposal is going to the Benefits and Compensation Committee. This would usually be the time when I'm talking about things that involve money where someone says, that's all nice, Edward, are we getting a raise or not? It's April, I don't know yet. I have to sit down with all the various budget requests. Almost nobody ever comes to the Chancellor and says, I want less money for my unit. I guess that would be Chancellor heaven. Everybody always has a set of needs, and I have to balance what we can afford, when we can afford it, and include trying to get people a raise again. And as I tell you every time we have these meetings, I don't consider it my job to be sure that I eventually retire with the most money in reserves. If we got the money, we'll spend it, but right now I don't know. Hospital affiliations, I want to talk about 3 issues regarding to that. It's a matter of public record. The Health and Hospitals Corporation of the City of New York has hired the Manat consulting firm to do a report on how long the City of New York can sustain the number of teaching hospitals and clinics they have, and whether they're distributing their money well. It's also no secret that the Health and Hospitals Corporation is hemorrhaging money like a sieve. And while Del Bosio ran for mayor 4.5 years ago the first time by getting arrested because they were going to close Long Island College Hospital, he got arrested. It got good press. You notice they closed Long Island College Hospital and it's going to be condominiums. So whether anyone who promises to keep hospitals open will or not, and what that means for us is the problem of Metropolitan. The last time there was a major threat against Metropolitan was during the Koch administration. But I am particularly concerned to get to the point about the sustainability of an inpatient pediatric service at Metropolitan. The average daily census in peds is small. Harlem Hospital has a more robust inpatient pediatric service. It wouldn't be rocket science for the report to say they might want to downsize inpatient peds at Metropolitan, move it to Harlem Hospital, but maintain outpatient at Met. And I don't know yet. I mean, obviously, no one at HHC is calling me for my opinion as a first phone call. They have their own infrastructure for doing that. I am told that the new CEO has gone back to the pediatric directors and said, here's the data, now you give me a proposal, as opposed to top down, but we'll see. Next issue for hospital affiliations is the proposal to create $1 billion hospital for Brooklyn. Now, you know, as I've said in these meetings before, anyone who's reading the newspapers realized that currently the mayor of the city of New York and the governor would have a hard time agreeing about whether today is Thursday. So whether they'll actually agree on this proposal for closing multiple of the hospitals of Brooklyn and building a new major teaching hospital for SUNY downstate in our lifetimes is unknown, but it does seem to be moving forward. And if that happens, will Brookdale, where we on any given day we have 25 to 30 of our medical students doing clerkships and electives, will Brookdale be there or not? So we have had multiple meetings about that, but that will be a work in progress. The long-term academic affiliation agreement, which was signed last year with Westchester Medical Center, is working beautifully and quite collaboratively, and I have nothing but praise for it. Next on the list to run through with you were searches. The search committee for dean of the graduate school brought forward 2 finalists. We are in rather intense negotiations. I'm sorry, they had 16 applications, and there are 2 finalists that were sent forward by the search committee, and we are in rather intense negotiations with one of them. The search for the dean of the School of Medicine is now up to something like 46 or 48 applicants. In spite of the deadline having been set last semester, strong applications continue to come in. We are down to discussions with about 5 or 6 people. Now, it is very common for someone who hasn't been in this game before to say, so what's taken so long? We have a governance process. I follow it to the letter. It involves committees and lots of interviews. And if you've never done a search for a department chair or a dean, bear with me for Halperin Introduction 101 to Searches. No matter how much time and energy candidates put into it, you can bet that a third to a half of them, after 3 to 5 on-site interviews, announce they're not really sure whether they want the chairmanship or the dean's job. Their spouse doesn't want to move. They've had a counteroffer from their other institution, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you put a lot of energy into this, and often a lot of it comes to naught. But that's the game. Yeah. Some of you heard my favorite story is I had the finalist who was going to be the chairman of anesthesiology at the University of Louisville when I was dean. He was the finalist. He made 5 visits to campus to wrap up the deal. And on the 5th visit, I was introduced, he was a man my age, I was introduced to the girlfriend who looks at me and says, this is all very interesting, but I'm not moving here, and he isn't either. And a search for the chair of family medicine. My understanding from Dr. Ayala is there is 1 candidate to go through the interview process and then a decision we made on the finalists. Search for the chair of anesthesiology. The search committee sent forth 2 finalists, neither of whom were judged to be the right fit. I met with the search committee, and they have brought forward 2 other finalists who have gone through interviews last week and this week. And I met with Mr. Israel and Mr. Brudnicki yesterday to start focusing on the preferred candidate. Search for the chair of microbiology and immunology is working through 2 finalists. Search for the chair of obstetrics and gynecology is interviewing between, I understand yesterday, 7 people invited for on-site interviews, roughly the same number for the search for the chair of surgery. Search underway for the director of development. Search underway for director of medical school admissions. We have several endowed chairs here at the college, which I have noted have not had their proper formal review since I've been here, all these indentures have requirements for formal reviews. I've asked some of you to participate on review committees because people who hold endowed chairs are supposed to be periodically reviewed in a proper process. We have brought 2 new members onto the Board of Trustees, both very distinguished individuals. It is no secret, I have told you at previous meetings, I was displeased with the amount of racial and gender diversity on the Board of Trustees and these new appointments. We have now made a positive step in correcting that. Founders Dinner will be this fall. A Nobel laureate and beloved former adjunct member of the faculty, Professor Campbell, has accepted the invitation to receive the William Cullen Bryant Award at Founders Dinner, and I have promised to send a car to go get him and bring him. And if you all wish to rise on spontaneous applause, thank Dana, who did the buttering up, sweet talk, and convincing. Want to take a bow? Okay, graduation next month. For the 3rd or 4th time, this year's graduation speaker is Jeremy Sugarman of Johns Hopkins. I have told many of you that while I was delighted to have FDA Commissioner Califf be the graduation speaker last year, he landed at LaGuardia 45 minutes before graduation started, where Charlie Longo heroically barreled his way. I'm sorry, he landed at Kennedy, actually, barreled his way from Kennedy into Manhattan to get him there, where he put his gown on, went on stage, gave his speech, and before I took my gown off, he was gone and back to the plane. Therefore, I asked Dr. Sugarman, will you show up a day early? Now, this is a wonderful, smart, and fascinating medical ethicist. You want to have lunch with him, dinner with him. You want to talk with him. You want to have him meet with your students. Contact Vilma and sign up, okay, because that's what he's doing here. If you're worried that he's a medical ethicist and he's going to talk about beneficence, non-malfeasance, and justice, that is not Jeremy. Jeremy speaks in English. My favorite one of his books is called Medical Ethics in Primary Care, and it's in lean, clean American prose, and you can understand it. Next on my list, accreditation issues. We did beautifully with the American Council on Graduate Medical Education visit earlier this year and got the highest level of reaccreditation thanks to Dr. McCarrick and the whole team. We have the CODA site visit for the dental school next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, right? Or Tuesday and Wednesday. You see any distinguished look of dentists walking around, smile and be sure you flossed and brushed beforehand, okay? Everybody on their best behavior with the dental accreditation. LCME. I have told the story in about 3 previous meetings with the faculty, but for those who haven't heard it, while we got full accreditation from the LCME for the maximum number of years, they are not too happy with us. Medical student satisfaction on the graduation questionnaire has been falling. Student indebtedness remains a problem. Changes in the curriculum remain a problem. Student satisfaction with the basic science courses ranges from 94% to 25% in the annual surveys. It's got to be fixed. We have some areas of improvement in the administration and in the clinical clerkships, and most of this data is a matter of record. The LCME gets it, and they have told me about it. They will be coming to see me and some of the other members of the team in July, and they have the authority to undo what they did. If we don't fix it, we will fix it. The time for debate about this is long gone. The curriculum committee has an action plan. We have a plan for student indebtedness and for student satisfaction. I want to congratulate the way the leadership in physiology has stepped up to the plate and given me a concrete proposal for this. We all need to be about our business to show them we're taking this seriously and we're going to do much, much better. In other academic affairs, the advertisements are all out for recruiting the new first incoming nursing school class for the fall. We hosted the president of Guatemala and a portion of the cabinet about a month ago. They wanted to see the biotech incubator and the dental school and the simulation center. And a grand time was had by all, although if there was anything amusing about it, after they all left and we were all relaxing, I said to the guys from Lessing, so we served Guatemalan coffee, right? No, actually we didn't. I said, what happens in the kitchen stays in the kitchen, okay? He liked the coffee, he kept drinking it. Vilma got to entertain the Secret Service. And he arrived about 30 minutes early, went to the buffet table, got himself a cup of coffee and a platter full of rugelach. He inhaled the rugelach. His Excellency doesn't speak any English. I speak hardly any Spanish, except I said, ¿Cómo se dice rugelach in Espanol? And his official translator stared at me for about 5 seconds and said, rugelach. I did a field trip with some of the third-year students last week to the museum at NYU. They had an exhibit of the drawings of Ramon y Cajal, winner of the Nobel Prize in, I guess, 1907 for his work on neurons and neural transmission, these magnificent colored pencil drawings of what he saw through the microscope. There were 90 of them, as well as exhibits of Vesalius and other magnificent books. And I wish I could tell you, you all need to go see it, but it was the last week of the exhibit. And for those of you who missed it, you really missed something special. Thanks to everyone who worked on a wonderful Yom HaShoah program. Thanks, Marie and others. I thought it went beautifully. And that, friends, is what's on my list. So I'm happy to talk about whatever you all want to talk about. Questions, comments, or things you want to expand about, or things on your mind. Yes? Alina Moran, the CEO from Metropolitan Hospital, and the Vice President for Public Affairs of the power company, Mr. Theobald. First name is Kenneth, right, Filma? Kenneth Theobald. With those two appointments, we have increased the number of underrepresented minorities on the board by 2 and women by 1. I was working on a third member who finally answered me today and told me that she was looking forward to discussing this in detail with me in 2019. So. What else? As we say back home in North Carolina, you all just stare at me. This will take a really long time.
How are we doing in terms of having enough people come into the dental? How are we doing in terms of the number of people coming to the dental clinic with training our students? I know we have to have a certain number that come through on a weekly basis in order to have enough training for them.
Anybody here from Jay or anyone else you prepared to comment? Can you pass Jay the microphone so people can hear him? Oh, let take the microphone so he can hear you, Jay.
Check. We're getting new patients every single day. And so, of course, our faculty are taking care of them at the moment. We anticipate by the end of June that we will have enough patients and students. The students ask every day about this. They're a little nervous. We understand that. The only issue that we're finding, we have to change our advertising to attract patients that need more basic work. You can't give dental students who are novices complicated cases. It's not going to work. We're dealing with it with our faculty, but we are actively looking and changing the parameters for advertising so that patients with families and so on that need basic care come in. Because in the very beginning, especially, even with us supervising, we have to keep the work very simple and slowly build them up to a point where they can do more kind of complicated work. That's just the way it is. I think we'll be fine in square to it, but we don't know for sure. But there more and more patients are coming in.
I mean, let me tell you something about this for your own personal choices about dental care. When the issue, no one told me about a dental school when I was interviewed for this job. I first heard about anybody having an idea about a dental school around November, December of 2012, after I started work in May. And I'm a compulsive note taker. I took not a single note about this at the first couple of meetings because I couldn't believe it was serious. And then I realized this was serious. What this has to do with the question from Dana and Jay's response was, I, like a lot of people, assumed who goes to a dental school for care. I never really paid much attention at Louisville, although the dental school was across the street. And I thought, well, I don't know, is this largely indigent care? And I ended up calling about 40 schools around the United States, trying to gather information so I could be an informed chancellor about starting a dental school. And was very quickly disabused of my preconceived notion. The largest users of care in dental schools are comparison shoppers. People making a living, working, who sized up what it would cost to go to the private practice with cherry wainscoting on the wall versus going to the dental school. And the second largest group of patients are people who believe in teaching. And the same kind of people say, I'm going to a teaching hospital for my medical care, often go to teaching clinics for their dental care. And they're perfectly happy to pay far less for their dental care than they might pay because they're paying for the cherry wainscoting and the piped-in music. Now, the benefit of our place is it's just gorgeous. So, you're not taking any hits for the beauty of the dental clinic here. But the point of that whole little speech is I'd recommend to you all consider whether you want to get your own dental care upstairs. We've got a wonderful dental faculty, and might be a place for you to think about for yourself or your family. How's that for an advertisement? I mean, it's not as good an advertisement. Have you seen the poster boy, our male model for the dental clinic? You want to take a bow? On billboards all over Westchester, from the side of buses, there's Adam Hammerman smiling in the dental chair, looking for. Okay, Adam and I, we made a condolence call when Alina Moran's mother died. So now we're in someplace in the South Bronx. So shouldn't be a total loss. We're going to go out for dinner. So we walk into the restaurant that Adam has picked, and he takes out the advertisement and says to the waitress, "You know who I am? I'm the model." That's nice. No discounts, So, yes, Jay.
With dental schools, certain groups of patients are notorious for coming to dental schools. One of them being uniformed services, union people that have day jobs. We're thinking about that because we probably have to do it. Most other schools do it, be open at least one night, which is not surprising. We haven't done it yet, but that's typical. Postal workers and so on, just by way of example, can come. As long as we accept their plan, they'll be here. And that's a whole other thing about what we can accept, what we can afford to accept, which is another discussion for a different day. But there are a number of groups of people that come in. But yet, you're right, shoppers. That's somebody looking for what they consider to be a bargain with good care. We're doing our best to attract them.
The problem that Jay talks about complexity of cases, that was my problem with pediatric clinical education where I went to medical school. The joke was, after doing your clerkship in pediatrics at Yale, what is the most common reason that a child is brought to a primary care pediatrician? Congenital transposition of the great vessels. I managed to go through my entire clerkship. I never saw anybody with an ear infection or a sore throat. I did my entire clerkship on pre-op and post-op for congenital cardiac disease and malignancies. I didn't see any. I saw no primary care. One afternoon, they sent me to a primary care pediatrician's office, and that was it. So what Jay's describing is, that's a problem. You have to learn how to walk before you can run. Yes, Jen. Can you use the microphone? So.
I was pleasantly surprised to see the clinic on Old Harry Road and Manhattan Avenue. A few hundred feet up that block is a Theodore Young Center, which has a really high volume of kids, and a little bit past.
What's the name of it? I didn't hear the name.
Theodore D. Young Community Center.
Theodore D. Young. Thank you.
And they have a camp there in summer. I mean, it's incredible, infinite number of kids running around, but also just past that, I mean, literally adjacent to it is a senior center. That is a senior center, a community center, but it's a senior home. These are ambulatory people that find, but it's a very, very high volume area where you should be able to get a lot of patients. Essentially, if you turn the sign around, it will be much.
Thank you. We have a team of individuals from Toro that are working on the advertising.
I'm here, and this is Rachel, I'm
Oh,
from
yeah.
marketing. So wonderful that you're hearing about all these great ads that are out. To that point, those ads are strategically placed in applications that we're trying to stop. But we are working, sort of the next step is community outreach, a huge opportunity to reach out to different groups, organizations, and try to draw in that. We have a meeting next week with Halperin, they will help network, which is a possible partner in addressing this. So we've done a lot of advertising, but we're moving now to like the outreach.
Can we do a randomized prospective trial to see whether the ads with Adam attract more patients than the ones without Adam?
Yes, Adam was our very beginning.
There's a hand. I see a hand to my left against. Can someone pass the microphone so we can all hear the question?
I don't remember exactly. I do recall that. Is it that students of the college can go for free to the clinic?
So yes, students will go for free, and all of you will receive 25% off. And we're expanding that to all of the Toro schools actually as of today.
I just want to say that I did see one of those advertisements I live in Portchester, and at the bus stop, and yeah, great, amazing.
Yes, Esther.
Can you elaborate a little bit
Microphone, they
more?
won't be able to hear you.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the plans to increase medical student satisfaction in anticipation of the LCME visit?
The areas that are identified that we need to improve were, in my opinion, insufficient satisfaction with the quality of counseling and advising services, dissatisfaction with some of the basic science and clinical instruction areas. We still have in certain areas unacceptable levels of I was spoken to inappropriately or felt I was being handled inappropriately in an interpersonal relationship. I want to come back to that in a minute. And the problem of average amount of student borrowing. For a school of our age, while we have a reasonable endowment, we do not have the kind of endowment of competitors where they can have much higher amounts of scholarship. We have high levels of borrowing. The distressing issue about students being spoken to inappropriately, the questionnaire does not drill down to a level of detail that allows one as a manager to approach it without doing more digging. But there are some isolated incidences, frankly, of faculty, but also some of residents in some of the teaching hospitals who are not handling the students as they ought to be. And some of it may be problems of foreign medical graduates who become house officers in some of the teaching hospitals who have very different opinions about what standard behavior is on a teaching service than someone who came of age in medical education in the United States. And this problem, of course, is not isolated to medical education. I will tell you a story that when Duke still had sabbaticals, like real sabbaticals. So when I was on sabbatical 25 years ago, I was an administrative intern working for the Chancellor of North Carolina State University. And I got interested in what the campus police do on a campus of 50,000 students and NCAA Division I sports. And I rode in the patrol car with the campus cops. And what this has to do with Esther's question is problems of partner physical abuse in graduate student housing, in which the officer would confront people and got the answer, I'm sorry, what is your problem? This is how things are done in my country. Well, whether they are or not, as you say, you are in North Carolina, sir, and you are not in whatever your country is. But the point of it is people who think that certain norms for how to, I will give you what is not humorous, but how come the medical students don't bring me coffee and go pick up my dry cleaning when I say they need to go get it? Because they are not your valet, they are medical students. Well, they're soft, they're wimps, that's the way things were done. Well, no, they're not. Am I making sense? Yeah, yeah. Dr. Blanchett.
Does the dental clinic interface with Westchester's dental clinic?
You need to use the microphone, Jay.
That's a good question, and we've been in discussions with them. As you know, the clinic, which is part of the Westchester Medical Center, that program is sponsored by New York Medical College, not by the dental school, because they predate the dental school. That's the reason for that. And yes, we've been discussing it. The original idea that we had, until maybe it's merged, which at some point we do think all dental should be together, it just makes things easier. We have discussed this at length, but that's long term. But we've been discussing now for shorter term. The original idea was to send some of our more complicated cases that our students couldn't manage to the dental center. We still think that, but at the moment our faculty is dealing with it because we have quite a few of them. So yes, we want to have, we will have more formal arrangement. What we're trying not to do is we don't want to take away any of their work. That's important, but they have a waiting list of about 6 months for basic care there, so we're not overly worried about that. Besides, we all know each other and everybody is friendly, so it's not an adversarial type thing. Eventually, all dental would be wise for many reasons to have all dental education, undergraduate and graduate, under the auspices of the dental school. We can't even consider that until we graduate the first class. We're not allowed to.
You have to, in this world, walk before you can run. So petitioning to change who the sponsor is of the dental GME, I guess, but it's not M, but GDE. Right? New York Medical College for over 50 years has had graduate education in dentistry. We have an oral maxillofacial surgery program. We have a general dentistry program. Should that remain in the graduate medical education office of the New York Medical College or be put under the Touro College of Dental Medicine? If you did something with the clinic at Metropolitan or at Westchester Medical Center, what would the impact be about the number of training cases for the graduate education as opposed to the undergraduate medical education? These are all non-trivial problems. We got to, basically, when we first raised it, Jay and I talked about this very on. Let's open the dental school, get our footways for the first couple of classes, and then we'll tackle these other problems as we go along. Yeah. I mean, it keeps going on, Howard, right? I mean, we were first having discussions when I got visited by a delegation of the District 9 of the Westchester, of the New York State Dental Association. When's the dental hygienist school opening? What we really need is dental assistants, which my response is, can we get a dental school open first before we start talking about, you know, a workforce pipeline for all of your offices? Make sense? Yes, please use the microphone.
Could you comment on the status of the 6 basic sciences departments, remaining 6 departments at this point?
The U.S. medical schools have between 1 and 12 basic science departments. And anything you can imagine for names, there's one name. You want to look at names of basic science departments in the United States, be sure you got lots of commas. The Department of Molecular and Cellular Physiology, cell biology, and structural, so they go on and on and on. There is no one way of doing it. Some of the more recent schools have a department called the Department of Basic Biomedical Sciences, period. Some schools consider medical history a basic science department. Some have population biology, some have biostatistics, some don't have, some have a department of anatomy, some don't. We have 6. I have had a proposal from various quarters about whether we should have 4 or whether we should have 6. When I met with some of the individual departments, some departments were in favor of combining them, some departments were strongly against it. The faculty executive, I don't know whether it's executive committee, the faculty senate, or the full faculty senate voted overwhelmingly against any combination. Ultimately, the power to decide how many departments we have is the power of the Board of Trustees. It says that quite clearly in the faculty constitution and bylaws. The answer to your question is, I presented it all to the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees said they wanted a formal written response from the faculty. Dr. Thompson wrote me a letter laying out the set of concerns, and the Board of Trustees says they want to evaluate that and me to provide a response. I think this conversation will be going on for many more months before we get anywhere close to any opinion about it. I think that it would be fair to say, finally on this point, right now, in my opinion, we got a lot more important and pressing issues to deal with than that structural issue. Making sure the curriculum is brought up to date for preclinical instruction in the dental school and the medical school, making sure we respond to some of the issues raised by accrediting bodies are the issues that we need to devote ourselves through this semester and through the summer, and having a dialogue about department structure. The college has managed to bungle through the first 157 years with the structure. We can talk about it for some more and work through this without it. Anything that I have not been asked or that I did not bring up on my list that's on people's minds that they want to talk about while we're here?
Could you tell us a little bit about what you're envisioning with the potential education academy? Just talk about that.
I want to. Okay, we're friends, so let's get to the point, Edward. The current system's not working. We got ourselves under the current system into a situation for which in many classes, student satisfaction is dropping. Many are quite fine and laudable, but many are dropping. Something's got to be done to fix that, and it does not appear to me that simply discussing this with individual department chairs has made a sufficient difference in the time I've been here. Many, many schools have something they either call the Academy of Educators, the group of educators, the education group, in which people who spend a large portion of their time teaching people who are not going into their discipline, not training their future PhD candidates, but teaching nursing students, medical students, dental students, physical therapy students in their core courses, have a place where they gather for faculty development, and also to have at least a dotted line reporting relationship to the people who are most directly concerned with it. What do I envision? I envision doing better than we're doing now. And then basically, if that means that we need to have somebody designated by the dean of the dental school and the dean of the School of Medicine to directly interact with this education group and say, folks, in course X, your satisfaction rates are dropping and we are going to fix it because it has to be fixed, then that's what we're doing. You know, and maybe, you know, Dana, my idea isn't perfect, but a lot of good ideas get killed on the shores of risk adverseness. What we got now isn't working sufficiently well. We're going to have to do better. And if my idea for this doesn't work, then we're going to try something else. But we're going to have to. This has got to be better. You know, any good system can be thwarted by people who are interested in thwarting it or simply ignore it. And any bad system can often be made better by people of goodwill. So I know that system alone isn't the solution, but that's what I think. Yeah. I mean, Dana's question, forgive me, this is going to be about a 45-second sermon. We represent ourselves to the world as a 56-acre New Englandish-style college campus where you are perfectly physically safe because no one from Larchmont or Harrison is coming to mug the students like I had in Louisville, where you have a faculty who get up in the morning and care about you and want to teach you so that you will go forth and do wonderful things and you will pass your necessary boards for your licensure and you'll be a good physical therapist, speech pathologist, a researcher in a PhD program, dentist, or physician. And if the data from the students is that we're not doing that well, then we need to fix it because that's what we're supposed to be. We do not represent ourselves to the world as the Gladstone Institute of Biomedical Research in San Francisco. Don't bother me with any students because I'm working on my next grant. We simply are involved in research and students are a nuisance. So if we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, that's not what New York Medical College is about. We need to do better. Thank you for listening to the sermon, but that's what's bothering me. Yes, Stuart. Please use the microphone so everyone can hear you.
Seems like it might be a good idea to have a meeting like this with the senior students. And we're talking about them, we're talking about them not liking us for this or that. Why don't we talk to them maybe even before they do the GQ survey and just discuss what the problems were and what we can do there?
There have been multiple such meetings. I guess the issue is we. Maybe you haven't been at them, but I can assure you that lots of the people, the leadership of the schools, have had multiple such meetings. Yeah, and I understand one of the departments decided to do some of their own focus groups with them. I mean, my point about it is no one's stopping you. If you wanted to say, I want to invite students in, we'll give you a list of fourth-year students. Say, we want to talk about my course. Please. Okay. I mean, this is not a top-down solution, right? This is us, not me. Okay, I teach a grand total of one first-year course, history of medicine, and I teach at Metropolitan, but I'm not, doing 60 weeks of contact hours, 3 or 4 hours a week, teaching introduction to physiology, biochemistry, or whatnot. You all are doing that, and if you don't feel like you're getting enough information from the customers and looking at the questionnaires aren't happening, please say to Gladys and Jennifer, we'd like to have a focus group, and you want to, have lunch in the cafeteria, send me the bill. I mean, one good way always to get a turnout is food. And hear what they have to say. Please, don't hesitate. Don't ask for my permission. That's what we're about. We got a bunch of smart people in the room who this is what you do for a living. I'm telling you what the data shows, and the ones who are best capable of correcting it isn't me. I've never taught physiology, pharmacology, biochemistry, or neuroscience. I think I know something about teaching basic radiobiology, but it's been a long time since I did that. Please, go ahead. We're going to give Roger the last word. No, the microphone. It's yeah, green means it's on. It's,
So I just went to a course, a leadership course that Disney runs at the Disney Institute. It was phenomenal in vision and values and product for your whoever it turns out to be, in this case your students. And they do things, they will come up and do certain things. I don't know, I left there like I saw the Lord. I mean, I have all these things planned for my residency when it comes to knowing, even just knowing what my values are, to then bring that to my faculty, to then bring that to my students, and maybe something along that lines would be something we could do for the faculty here to make them be better leaders and or better educators or something along that line. I know we're all wonderful, but maybe just better.
Adam, you did the class, right?
Yes.
I mean, what, you agree with Roger?
I think it's a very valuable class. It's not inexpensive, but I think it's a very valuable class, and I have heard many success stories when they have come to various companies to do it. And many companies have types of Disney classes, but Disney is the one who created the actual institute themselves.
An offshoot of the.
Did someone pass Dr. Frischman a microphone?
Very short. The offshoot of that, they're in the hospital now. The offshoot of the Disney group. So, they're actually close by if anyone wants to.
Mike Israel had me watch some of the videos from the group he has, and Mike has offered to make them available to us if we want to use them. It takes a willingness to be quite open to ideas if we decide to, any of you decide, if we offer this and you decide to participate, by which I mean, it doesn't work if you go to these by saying, I'm doing great. And I've been doing great at this for 30 years. I can't imagine what you could possibly tell me. I really know my subject area. I'm great. But as Roger talked about values, are you prepared to say you could do it better? Have you ever dealt with a secret shopper? I did this when I was department chair in radiation oncology. You realize how hard it is to get an appointment? You realize how many times the phone rings before someone answers? You realize you have no clue about that because you're sitting in your clinic room seeing patients and you don't know what a pain in the neck it is to have. No wonder the patients are mad by the time they come see you. You understand how many hurdles they have to jump through in order to actually get in the door? Do you realize that the person who is at your reception desk goes to the Duke cafeteria in the morning, gets herself breakfast and puts it at her desk and is sitting there eating her grits while people are in line and she's talking while she's eating? No, maybe you think you're the greatest oncologist in the world, but you're not running a tight ship here. And in higher education, some schools, they have secret shoppers who go to the bursar's office, the registrar's office, and try to do stuff, and then see how they're treated. Are they greeted politely or not, etc.? And my point of that is, it's a good suggestion. We'd have to, those of you who said, yeah, we're going to try it, would have to say, okay, I'm prepared to listen that I might not be the greatest at what I'm doing, and I might be able to do it better. And that's a non-trivial psychological thing to do, is to accept that maybe you could be better at what you think you know better than anybody else. In the video that Mike Israel shared with me, the man who is held up as the poster child is an emergency room doc. And he's got fabulous scores for his clinical competence and god-awful scores for patient satisfaction. And he's the chief of an emergency room. And he looks into the camera and says, I'm a great doc. I went to great medical school. I had a great residency. I'm publishing papers. I'm fabulous. And how the hell are they telling me I don't have great satisfaction scores? And I'm really resentful. I'm supposed to go take this class. And I got a bad attitude. And I took the class. And I realized, take your hand off the doorknob while you're talking to people. Sit down. Don't stand over them. Hold people's hands when they're upset. Say, I've told you what I think is right. Now, do you have any questions for me? It's taken me a grand total of 20 seconds to do stuff that I wasn't doing anymore with each patient. I was worried it was going to slow me down. Within the next quarter, my satisfaction rates start going up. It wasn't hard. I was just a bullheaded character who thought, hey, I'm a great doc, so there's nothing I can do that's better. My point, yeah, there's a lot of stuff we all do that's the way we do it. But if we're open to listening to ideas, even if you don't want to drink the Disney Kool-Aid and run around with the Mickey Mouse ears, yeah, we could all do better. Okay, time's up. Thanks everyone for coming. Have a good day.